Welcome back, one and all, to another episode of For the Love of Furniture, where together we take a look at all of the furniture on permanent display at the Westmoreland Museum of American Art. My name is Tony Allgeier, and I am your resident designer and lover of furniture. On today's episode, we're going to take a trip back in time to the Colonial period in American history, discover more about the ancient styles of this time, and also learn about the gender roles that truly shaped the methodology of architecture and design throughout this time period. All of this content stems from one spectacular piece of furniture on display at the museum. This spiffy Federal Swell-Front Sideboard, circa 1820, Boston, Massachusetts. Ooh. This beautifully crafted sideboard, also known as a buffet, was typically used during its creation in a dining room setting for serving food, displaying dishes, and for storage. So what was happening during the early colonial period in American history? What was the federal style of furniture? And who were some of the key players who shaped this stylistic time in America? Well, for starters, early colonial life was difficult and filled with new struggles that would separate the United States from the rest of the world with new ideas and concepts of government. This led to the American Revolutionary War from 1775 to 1783, where Americans in the 13 colonies defeated the British. This gained America independence from the British Crown and established the United States as the first modern constitutional liberal democracy. After the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776, the term colonial didn't really fit the mark for describing the independent nation. So designs produced from about 1780 until 1830 are typically described as belonging to the federal style. During those subsequent decades when America was in its infancy, the country was not only defined by its government, but also by its way of life. The decorative arts at this time moved away from the ornate looks of the past, such as the heavily carved and massive look of Rococo pieces, and instead embraced the rising neoclassicism. This time period of colonization in America led to new ideas in ways of living and decor, though this style was only achieved by the wealthiest sectors of early Americans who could afford to build and furnish their homes in this type of style. Originally, it was as much a political statement supporting the new federalist style of government as it was a design aesthetic. In terms of style, the tendency of the federal period was to move towards an increasingly strict version of classicism, based on sophisticated awareness of the published designs of the greats from the Renaissance and on knowledge of actual classical buildings. Books of detailed measure drawings made at archaeological sites, such as the multi-volume Antiquities of Athens, written in 1762, aided the movement towards neoclassicism. Off the bat, I do find it very interesting that a country that is just newly developing really looked to the greats to create their own style. But there's a huge reason for that. The furniture was most sought after in larger cities and port towns along the U.S. Eastern Seaboard. These included Boston, Philadelphia, New York, Baltimore, and Charleston. All of these were really associated with the federal style of furniture. These towns were home to many, many wealthy people who still had significant ties to Europe and were influenced by European designers. These cities were centers for manufacturing the federal style of furniture. Two English furniture designers and cabinetry makers are credited with bringing federal-style furniture to America through their books. George Hepplewhite's 1788 book, The Cabinet Maker and Upholsterer's Guide, and Thomas Sheridan's The Cabinet Maker and Upholsterer's Drawing Book are considered to be landmark books of the federal furniture movement and responsible for introducing the style to a wider American audience. For this reason, Federal furniture is sometimes referred to as Hepplewhite and Sheridan style. Most often, Hepplewhite pieces, especially small tables, chairs, and writing desks, are crafted of mahogany, but they can also be made of mahogany veneer. Mahogany veneer over cherry wood is sometimes referred to as the poor man's mahogany. Hepplewhite's designs also have a more delicate-looking appearance when compared with the earlier Chippendale and Queen Anne furniture that was made during the Colonial period. Trademark features of a Hepplewhite style include spade feet, shield back chairs, marquetry, and tambour fronts on case goods. Though Sheridan's work also favored mahogany, there are some differences to keep in mind when distinguishing these two styles under the Federal style umbrella. In contrast to Hepplewhite's shield back with an oval form, Sheridan preferred a square-shaped back when it came to seating. The legs on his pieces, rather than being innovative, followed the traditional round shapes of the past. However, as American cabinetry makers studied both styles, they sometimes mingled them together. Two of the best-known cabinetry makers of this time were Samuel McIntyre and Duncan Phyfe. McIntyre was an architect based in Salem, Massachusetts, who began his career carving figureheads for ships. Houses that he designed for wealthy sea captains and merchants were generally created with simple forms, then ornamented by his carvings both on the interior and the exterior. He often carved ornamental details for other cabinetry makers, making it very unclear whether he even designed complete pieces of furniture. His name is attached to Hepplewhite and Sheridan-inspired furniture with detailed carvings in his particular style. A carved basket of fruit and flowers was a favorite McIntyre decorative motif. Born in Scotland, Duncan Phyfe served an apprenticeship as a cabinet maker in Alabama, New York, and then eventually moved to New York City to establish his successful furniture business around 1792. Although his designs incorporated both Hepplewhite and Sheridan influences, his work took on a unique character that made his name widely known as a leading American designer craftsperson. His early work was very close to Sheridan's model, including productions of tables with a three-legged pedestal base, often with a folding top arranged so that the table could stand against a wall and be open to make a freestanding dining table. His ornamentation really did vary from simple reading to elaborate carvings. Phyfe's style constantly adapted with the times, turning to imitation of French and related English Regency styles, and then, after 1815, to the French Empire style, as these became known successfully in America. He later developed adaptations to pillar and scroll styles using carved versions of classical columns and S and C-shaped scrolls in the later half of the 1830s. Phyfe was said to have carried out Hepplewhite and Sheridan's neoclassical designs to perfection. His career lasted until he retired in 1847. Regionally, craftspeople began to reinterpret design styles in unique ways. Those in Boston, for example, were experts in the process of inlaid woodwork and the creation of tambour doors in cabinetry pieces. I found this video and I just had to share it. It's so fascinating seeing the intricate, tiny little details that goes into inlay and marquetry. During the Federal period, a wide variety of objects that had previously been imported during the Colonial era were now produced locally in the United States. While 1820 is usually noted as the end date to the Federal style, the transition into new styles was gradual. Duncan Phyfe was always ready to adapt to these stylistic changes. In the 1820s and 1830s, American architecture and interior design found a new devotion to Greek models, generating the first of several 19th century revivals of the historic past. Two of the most notable structures that are perfect examples of the federalistic style include Thomas Jefferson's home, Monticello, and the White House. Both are luxurious in their opulence, yet understated in their referencing to the ancient forms of architecture and design. Some of the key architectural details shown in these two structures include semicircular or elliptical fan lights above paneled doors, windows with double-hung sashes, typically shown with 6 panes per sash, cornices emphasized with dentil molding, and windows that were typically symmetrically balanced with a center door. Like the neoclassical furniture of Europe that inspired it, Federal-style furniture looked to classical Greek and Roman designs for its cues. In fact, neoclassical style got its start in Europe after the ruins of Pompeii were excavated, and examples of Roman furniture were discovered. Ancient styles truly shaped the colonial period, especially in the Federal style. The classical traditions of the Greek and Roman civilizations preferred these styles of construction between 1000 BC to 300 AD. The Renaissance in 1450 to 1680 then rediscovered these ancient rules of architecture. These rules were again put into practice in America starting around 1740. The primary elements are based on the structure of a column, where you have a pedestal, column, and entablature. This system is meant to support a porch with roof rafters above, and is a building system that has been perfected over centuries. Two of the best known examples that are still in existence today are the Parthenon and the Pantheon. On closer inspection, you can see on both that there is a split between each stone support above each column. This is because it is a functional system that had to work to hold up these large stones supported above. There are 5 orders of architecture, including Tuscan, Doric, Ionic, Corinthian, and Composite. Each order is a detailed system based off of proportions. The 3 main orders that are typically referenced in architecture and design are the Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian. One idea that came out of these orders is that there is a gender associated with each style of architecture. This is by far one of my biggest pet peeves of all time, gendering something that has absolutely no gender. But mathematically and structurally, it does make sense why the Greeks and Romans really did venture into putting into categories male and female dominated roles within an architectural setting. Even though I don't fully agree with it nowadays, I get where they were coming from. If you look at each order from a mathematical standpoint, you can see that they are broken out based off of a formula, with D being the variable. The Doric order is 1 to 8D, Ionic is 1 to 9D, and Corinthian is 1 to 10D. Ideally, this all stems back to the dimensions of the human body, where proportionally the body can be broken down based off of the size of the human head. The diameter of each column is based off of the human form as well. All of the parts of each system are related to each other and based on one unit, D. This relates all the parts together to create one cohesive structure. The Doric is a more masculine order, showcasing very clean lines and structure. The Ionic order is more feminine and light, and the Corinthian is considered to be a young maid. Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man is all based off of Vitruvius's writings of the Golden Ratio. All of the proportions are related and can be broken down into simple parts to create the whole. One awesome example of this Golden Ratio can be seen in the Mona Lisa. Let's take a trip back to the Westmoreland Museum of American Art and take a closer look at this amazing Federal-style swell-front sideboard. The earliest versions of the sideboard made their appearance in the 18th century, but they gained most of their popularity during the 19th century as households became prosperous enough to dedicate a room solely to dining. Sideboards were made in a range of decorative styles and were frequently ornamented with costly veneers and inlays. There are so many key structural elements that make up this sideboard. It is comprised of 6 thin, turned, reeded legs which support the vertical structure of the piece, tying into the horizontal elements of the top and base. The thinner shelving structure creates stability to span a wider distance from opening to opening. A back, door front, and drawers are then added to complete this piece. Oval-shaped brass pools are also featured. The most decorative elements are showcased in the expert inlaying of the wood veneer details, brilliantly and painstakingly crafted on the door and drawer fronts, as well as the veneer facades of the exposed supports. The doors and drawers are inset and flush with the overall structure, creating a smooth face. The subtle curved sides add another technical element of precision and mathematics to ensure the perfect fit. The curve breaks up the angular streamlined nature of this craftsperson's choice of inlay pattern. It also relates the picture-framed oval shapes of the bottle drawer's main top drawer, as well as the oval-shaped hardware. This curve also relates to the tapered reeded legs. Another key feature is the book matching of the applied veneers. This is the process of turning over every other piece of veneer so that the adjacent pieces are opened, like 2 adjacent pages of a book. The veneer joints match and create a mirrored image pattern at the joint line, showcasing continuity of grain. The one area of this sideboard that has me a little confused is the central oval picture-framed inlaid veneer. If we turn this portion 90 degrees counterclockwise, you can see that it matches beautifully to the 2 other oval veneers applied to the bottle drawers. Since everything else is so beautifully symmetrical, and this oval stands alone in the center, from my vantage point, I would have loved to see this portion book matched with the graining radiating out from the center line. Notice the attention to detail where the inlaid lines strategically match up to the door and drawer heights. Overall, this piece is visually stunning. Federal-style furniture is timeless, elegant, classic, and can work with so many different design styles. This kind of furniture takes its inspiration from European designs, but it also is so distinctly American. Even today, Federal-style furniture is still influential for modern furniture designers. In general terms, Federal furniture is wood furniture featuring colored inlays and geometric designs. The Federal period continued in furniture manufacturing until the late 1820s, although the Empire style was also gaining popularity at this time. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of For the Love of Furniture, where we discovered so much more about this amazing Federal-style swell-front sideboard. To view this piece and all the other pieces on display at the museum, feel free to schedule your time to take a trip to the Westmoreland Museum of American Art. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay curious.